Hello and welcome to the course Introduction to Advanced Cognitive Processes. I am Ark Verma from IIT Kanpur, and we have been talking about comprehension of language in this last lecture. And in the last lecture I talked to you a little bit about how words are comprehended, how words are understood. We talked about how form is activated, visual form or auditory form, and I also towards the end talked about how meaning is generated. So I talked about introspection, I talked about types and tokens, I talked a little bit about semantic networks, and I also talked about the embodied semantics approach. Again, I'm not really going into a lot of detail into all of these processes that can be actually dealt with in a different course, but I'm just trying to give you a bit of a flavor about comprehension of language in these two lectures. So today I will talk to you a little bit about how people understand or how people make sense of sentences. So let us have this example again, something I've borrowed from Traxler's book. So it says, time flies like arrow, fruit flies like a banana. Now what is happening here? Time flies like an arrow, fruit flies like a banana. Doesn't the second part kind of seem out of place? Doesn't it really seem that it's not really ungrammatical, but there is a bit of an incongruence in meaning. Fruit flies like a banana. Does fruit fly like a banana? Or if you kind of take a step back, put a punctuation mark there, and then you can see fruit flies like a banana. So I'm talking about flies which sit on fruits, and yes, they like a banana because you will see a lot of flies on wherever you will find bananas. In the earlier part, you had time flies like an arrow, which is a more of a metaphorical statement. You don't really think that there is time and it flies like an arrow. It's just like a metaphorical reference to how an arrow moves, and maybe time also moves just like that. So what is happening here? Organization of words, or the way I've arranged the words in the two, or rather Traxler's example has arranged the words, is basically led you to understand the correct one in the first case but misunderstand the sentence in the second case. How do people understand sentences? How is this organization of words in a sentence leading to meaning? We'll try and do a very brief survey of this in today's lecture. Before we move, let us talk a little bit about what a sentence is. A sentence is an organization of meaningful words, and this organization has to be according to the grammatical rules of the language, A, and B, it has to be able to convey the intended message. Whatever was intended by creating that organization, the meaning should be conveyed. So two things: a sentence is an organization of meaningful words, should be according to rules of grammar. Third is should convey the intended message. So these are the three things you should keep in mind. Speakers systematically organize these sequences of words into phrases, clauses, and sentences. I am kind of not really getting into the differences and details between what a phrase is and what a clause is and those kind of things. I'm just talking about sentences. You can just kind of apply all of this to across the board. Now, when listeners are trying to comprehend this, what they have to do is they have to determine what was the sequence of the word that the speaker intended. Okay, what was the sequence of words that is organized, and use this information to actually discover or unfurl the intended meaning of the speaker. So I am, as a speaker, saying something, the listener has to, or suppose you have to, because you are listening to this now, you have to really kind of parse this in a way that, okay, this is how the organization would have been, and this is what this person would have meant by saying this. So I'll kind of give you a couple of demonstrations very quickly about this in a moment. So you have to understand, first is that speakers anyways do this organization, and the listeners are continuously trying to decipher this organization. It becomes a little bit easier in written sentence or written language, because there are punctuation marks which help you to really decipher this. Now, so when language scientists have to study sentences, they are interested in two things. They are interested in how people organize the words before and during speaking, and they are also interested in what are the cues that these listeners are using to figure out how words in these sentences are related to each other. And as those cues are vital in enabling the listeners to understand the speaker's intended meaning. So two things language scientists really would look for is how am I as a speaker organizing the words, and the second thing is how are you as a listener figuring this out. So this is pretty much what we will be doing in this lecture. Now there are two things here. The study of syntax / grammar involves discovering the cues that language provides as to how and as to demonstrate how these words in sentences are relating to one another. We will see some examples very soon. And then there is aspect of syntactic parsing. What is syntactic parsing? Syntactic parsing is basically, it involves discovering how comprehenders are using these cues, how are they parsing or organizing words together, and they are relating them to each other during the process of meaning making, during the process of interpreting a sentence. Now let us now start a little bit with some examples. So I have two sentences here, or I have just one sentence here. It says Dr. Phil discussed sex with Rush Limbaugh. Now again, this is an example I've borrowed from Traxler's book. The sentence says Dr. Phil discussed sex with Rush Limbaugh. Now again, how am I as a reader, or how are you as a listener going to parse this? There are two possible ways. Either you can put it like this: Dr. Phil discussed sex with Rush Limbaugh. So some discussion of sex is happening, or Dr. Phil discussed sex with Rush Limbaugh. So the idea is that the act of sex with Rush Limbaugh has been discussed with somebody else. Now just to kind of work you through these solutions, the two probable instances could be either supplemented or could arise out of different kinds of context. Suppose one of the likely intended meaning happens when the reader kind of puts the prepositional phrase with Rush Limbaugh as being closely related to the verb discussed. So you're putting here with Rush Limbaugh in in one of the boundaries here in the second part, or this meaning would fall out of the conversation. Let us see how this really is. Who did Dr. Phil have on his radio show this morning? And somebody is saying he had Rush Limbaugh on the show, and then you could ask, what did they talk about? So I would say that they talked about sex. Dr. Phil discussed sex with Rush Limbaugh. So the idea is, from this conversation, the meaning that you will generate is that the listener, the critical thing will be that the listener will need to package discussed and sex together in one thing, because they are discussing sex, and the listener needs to tie the whole thing with Rush Limbaugh. So discussed sex with Rush Limbaugh. So all of this will come together. Now we could then paraphrase this entire meaning. What am I understanding out of this sentence in this conversation, given the context that I was just discussing? Dr. Phil had a discussion with Rush Limbaugh, and this discussion was about sex. So this is one of the meanings I can come up with. The other thing could be, or the other way to organize this will be, suppose, say for example, I kind of attach sex with this person, Rush Limbaugh. I kind of putting these two things together. Now how will this kind of conversation emerge? Let me give you a bit of a context. Suppose the question is, who did Dr. Phil have sex with? Then is, Dr. Phil had sex with Rush Limbaugh. You will say, I don't believe you, and then somebody says, really, he talked about it afterwards. Dr. Phil discussed sex with Rush Limbaugh. And then, okay, so the idea is, based on what the preceding context is, the speaker is kind of going to attach the prepositional phrase with to either one set of words, or the prepositional phrase sex, or the phrase sex with one set of person, and depending upon how I am putting these two organizations together, the meaning will be generated. Okay, sometimes this explicit arrangement or organization of words is not really needed. It's probably not needed most of the time, because the preceding context is there, and the preceding context kind of helps you figure out what the meaning exactly is going to be. So let us get a little bit more into detail about this particular concept, this concept of chunking words together. Now there's a better way of saying this. This is referred to as parsing, and parsing is basically grouping of words into constituent phrases and analyzing the grammatical structure of the sentences in order to understand the meaning. So you have to know which words will go with which words, so that you can make the correct meaning out of a particular sentence. Again, an example could be, and again, if you're talking about spoken language, this has to be rather incremental, because anyways, words are sentences are unfolding in time. So you hear the first word, then you hear the second word, then you hear the third word, and each incoming word you have to attach to a particular group so that you can make this meaning. So suppose for example I have this thing, Amanda believes the senator during his speech. Now I am talking about Amanda believing the senator during his speech. So Amanda is probably, till here you will make a meaning that okay, Amanda is believing the senator whatever he is saying in his speech. But I can actually give you some further information. I can say Amanda believes the senator during his speech was lying to the committee. Now what happens is when you add the remaining part, you're kind of getting a completely different meaning. Now you're getting the meaning that the senator was lying in his speech, and that is what Amanda believes. So this is again a demonstration of how comprehension of sentences is something that is fairly incremental in nature, something that is kind of unfolding in time, and with time you have to be prepared to really put certain words together and certain words separately so that you make the correct meaning out of it. Grammar or rules of syntax are going to be your cues in order to how to arrange this. But again, one of the things is we are not really actively or probably in a very informed way using rules of grammar, but again that's for a different discussion. Now these are the kind of groupings I have been talking about. So suppose you have a sentence, you will have generally a noun phrase in the sentence, and in the noun phrase you will have a noun and something else with it, and you can have a verb phrase wherein the verb is there and some noun is there, and so on and so forth. Suppose I have a particular sentence, colorless green ideas sleep furiously. Now this is again a very Chomskyan example, something that's been used so many times before, but here I'm just demonstrating that you can actually have these structures. So you have colorless green ideas as one noun phrase, in that you have colorless as an adjective, and then you have green ideas in which green is the adjective, ideas is the noun phrase. So this is your first grouping, and then you have sleep furiously, which is the verb phrase because verb is at the head of this phrase, and furiously is the adverb. So you have verb and adverb. So the idea is the sentence has a noun phrase and a verb phrase. Noun phrase can be further broken down into having a noun, adjective, so on and so forth. Verb phrase can be broken down into having a verb and then other things. Say suppose sometimes verbs will have objects, sometimes verb will have adverbs. This is one of the guiding principles of one of the ways people organize words. Suppose I take a different example, the big dog chased the cat. Now I have the big dog and I have chased the cat. The big dog is the noun phrase, the is a determiner, article, whatever you call it. Big dog mein big is the adjective and dog is the noun phrase. So this is one. The second is in the verb phrase chase the cat, you have chased as the verb, and then you have the cat as a noun phrase. The is your determiner or article or whatever you may call it, and cat is the noun. So again, this is one of the ways. Now if somebody is reading it from this end after you've organized it, they will most likely make the correct meaning out of it. But again, this organization or parsing into chunks of words is something that is rather tricky, and again I'm not really going into a lot of detail about how tricky is this. I'll probably give you an example very quickly, but the idea is this is something which is very interesting, and linguists and psycholinguists have been dealing with how people are making meaning of sentences using these kind of organizational principles. So this is something very interesting. Let us kind of give you a bit of an example of what is called a garden path sentence. Now a garden path sentences are kind of sentences which people have traditionally used to demonstrate how the process of parsing may run into troubles, or how the process of parsing may kind of run into a particular problem at different times. Suppose you have a sentence called the horse raced past the barn fell. Now again, in general speech, if there is context, you will probably get the correct meaning out of it, but if you don't really have any context preceding, then you'll kind of probably ask yourself that what really fell down? Did the horse fell down, or the barn fell down, or what is really happening here? The meaning, however, is the horse that raced past the barn was the horse that fell, or was the one that fell down. Now these kind of sentences, which are slightly difficult to understand, which are slightly difficult to interpret, even using the syntactic cues, are referred to as the garden path sentences. Now the problem here is that this is a type of a sentence where the syntactic structure would lead you to expect one meaning, but the actual meaning or the actual conclusion could be something else, or there might be multiple conclusions possible. So these are the garden path sentences. Now there are two approaches to how sentences are parsed or organized, and the first approach that I am going to talk to you about is called the autonomous models approach or the syntax first approach. Now this is very important. The syntax first approach believes that at the initial stages of when you are hearing a sentence or when you are encountering a sentence, the parsing mechanism will take hold of the grammatical principles. So the parsing mechanism will actually follow the syntax or the grammar of the language, and it will use grammar as a guide to parse words into constituents and make meaning out of it. I'll take just one of such examples. One of the principles here is the principle of late closure. Now the principle of late closure basically says that when a person is hearing a new word, the person's parsing mechanism is going to assume that this word is a part of the ongoing current phrase. Okay, so suppose I am starting a particular word, I listen to the first word and then I listen to the second word is grouped with the first one, third word is grouped with the second one, similarly. Okay, let us work with an example. What am I talking about? I am talking about cast iron. Cast iron sinks. So I must be talking about that cast iron does not float, it sinks. I must now be talking about cast iron sinks quickly. So I am just talking about, yes, cast iron really sinks rather quickly. Now I am talking about cast iron sinks quickly rust. Now what am I talking about? I am talking about kitchen sinks probably made of cast iron which get rusted very quickly. So the idea is, if you look at what is happening here, if you begin with putting everything just to the first phrase following the principle of late closure, you might be led to expect something else, but the incoming information might change the meaning completely. Now we all have the sense of that we understand language so effortlessly, the comprehension of language so flawless and so on and so forth. If you are actually following this kind of principle completely based on grammar, you might be led to make mistakes, more mistakes than people are actually observed to make. So this is one of the problems with the syntax first approach. So again, an alternative is offered. The alternative is the interactionist account. The interactionist account says that parsing not only takes grammar into account, but parsing takes a lot of other kinds of information into account as well. It takes into account semantics, context, environment, so on and so forth before starting to segment a sentence, and all of these information contribute equally to for somebody making a meaning out of that sentence. Let us take an example. Now you see two scenarios here. This is again borrowed from Goldstein's book on cognitive psychology. Now the idea is the spy saw the man with the binoculars. In the first thing you are seeing that the spy is using the binoculars to see a man. In the second case you are saying that the spy is seeing a man who is having the binoculars. Now if either of the two pictures were available to you while you are listening or reading the sentence, your task of making meaning will become easier. If neither of the two pictures are available to you, your task of understanding meaning will be that much more difficult. Again, punctuations may come in and those things, but again I am talking more about spoken language. So the idea is, here is a good demonstration of the fact that you will be using what is the visual scenario. Suppose I am saying this to you and that the scene is playing out right here. You are actually going to use your information of the environment. You're probably looking at these two people, the spy and the man, and then understanding my sentence with the help of that visual thing. Because you're using that visual event as an aid to parse whatever speech I am saying, your understanding will be quicker, will make less errors, and will be correct. So this is one of the demonstrations of the fact. The other kind of fact again is some experiments that Jerry Altman's group did, or Michael Tannenbaum's did, and the idea was to demonstrate how are you using the visual scenario to understand a particular sentence. So participants were shown these kind of things, these kind of displays, and they were basically hearing two sentences like put the apple on the towel in the box. Now as soon as the participant hears put the apple, you will see the eye movements go to the apple on the towel. You can see it in the right box on the towel, so then it goes to on the towel, in the box. So then you come back, you look at the apple on the towel and you try and bring it to the box, again completely visually. So this is again also an evidence of the fact that the human mind or the human brain is using more information than just grammar or than just syntax to comprehend meaning. So again, this is one of the things you can do it in a different scenario as well. Now you have two apples, one on the napkin, one on the towel. Now if you see put the apple on the towel in the box, you very quickly will go to the apple, then you will actually go on the apple on the towel and you will put it in the box. Again, visually just your eyes are moving here. So these are some of the examples, some of the evidences of the fact that people are using the visual information, the context information and some other semantic information in order to understand meaning, in order to make meaning out of the sentences. Not only grammar but something more than that. Now these are again two very important prominent approaches in understanding meaning of sentences. So what is the deal? How do you understand this entire thing? The deal is that we need to parse sentences into shorter parts in order to understand the meaning, in order to make sense. That much is given. Second is we must be using both syntactic and semantic information, whatever the rules of the grammar are, whatever the word meanings are, and we also take into account the environmental setting. Suppose I am saying something to you in a cafeteria, a lot of events are playing out. You will certainly look around, and if I am talking about current scenario, you will look around and you will see and you will use whatever the event description is in order to understand whatever I am saying. So the idea is to you at least syntax is available, semantics is available and environmental information is also available. So you will use all of these three kinds of varied information in order to understand the sentence. Now if you kind of again take a step back, look at whatever I have been talking about, you must wonder to yourself that parsing is not something that is so easy. Parsing is something that takes a lot of time. It is a dynamic cognitive function. It is a multifaceted function because it is drawing upon information from various sources. So that was probably all from talking about comprehension of sentences. We'll talk about something else in the next class. Thank you.